Incredible rescue. Brave woman exposes hidden warmth, changing billionaire CEO's life forever. The storm thrummed ferociously against the town, forcing people to scurry for safety. Trees bent like willows in the wind, and thunder echoed in the air. But amidst this chaos, Sarah, a nurse and single mother, dashed out, determination lighting her eyes. She knew there was someone in danger, someone who needed her. The headlines would scream her bravery, but for her, it was simple. She had to save Mr. Jenkins, the elderly war veteran from just a few blocks away. As she reached Mr. Jenkins' home, the water surged around her ankles. She felt it flood her boots, chills racing up her spine. But nothing compared to the fear that gripped her heart as she caught sight of him, perched on his front porch, his wheelchair immobilized by the rising waters. "Hold on, Mr. Jenkins. I'm coming." Her voice rang out like a lifeline. When she reached him, she barely had time to calm his frantic eyes before the current pulled at them both. Time slowed, every heartbeat drumming the rhythm of her resolve. She looped her arms around him and managed to lift him free, muscles straining against the weight of the water, the wind trying to tear them apart. His grateful smile lit up the darkened storm as they floated to safety. In that moment, amidst the chaos, something beautiful sparked a connection, an understanding of shared humanity amidst separate worlds. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Richard Lawson sat alone in his mansion, walls closing in on him like a vice. While the storm tossed the town, it did nothing to shake the isolation that wrapped around him tighter than the rain. A billionaire in a world convinced that wealth equated worth. Richard watched, heart aching, as sirens blared in the distance, calling the heroes people like Sarah as she emerged with Mr. Jenkins. A small crowd formed, awe etched onto their faces. Sarah was the hero this town needed. But her act of kindness soon caught Richard's attention. He found himself torn. Deep inside, he admired her strength, her selflessness against the backdrop of his gilded loneliness. As she brushed the water from her face, he couldn't help but feel a pang of admiration and jealousy all at once. She was thriving in the chaos while he felt stifled by his own privilege. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah returned home, she collapsed on her couch, Tommy's laughter echoing delightfully through their modest space. Yet, whispers of town gossip filled the air. Richard's interest in her was more than just admiration. When he tried to publicly acknowledge her bravery during a press event, it backfired, drawing community lines of us versus them. The town wasn't ready for Rich and Poor to mingle as easily as the scent of fresh apple pie wafted through the streets. Storms passed and sun rays danced on puddles. Sarah felt the weight of judgment, her heart heavy. Could she really welcome someone from a world so different from hers? Meanwhile, Richard pondered if stepping into her life was worth the risk of his empire crumbling under whispers and prejudice. The storm had changed everything, leaving both Sarah and Richard standing at a new beginning and an uncertain future. With the town's whispers swirling around them like ghosts, they each wondered if they could forge a connection that defied expectations. The world outside was starting to mend, but what about the pieces of their own lives shattered by fear and doubt? The brisk morning air felt fresh and new, as if the aftershocks of the storm had scrubbed the world clean. Sarah settled into her routine, her heart lighter but still burdened. Tommy raced around their small yard, chasing a soccer ball, laughter bubbling up in the cool sunlight. It was hard to believe that just yesterday, they had been thrust into chaos. But beneath her smiles for Tommy, Sarah's thoughts spiraled. Richard Lawson, a name that once meant little to her, now loomed large. The way he had watched her, the way the crowd had reacted to him, made her heartbeat skip. What did it mean for her, a simple nurse, to be viewed through the lens of a billionaire? The admiration he showed was as much a threat as it was a compliment. Meanwhile, Richard awoke to a sunbeam filtering through the curtains of his opulent room. illuminating the vast emptiness that lay around him. He spent the night wrestling with a restless mind, thoughts consumed by her Sarah. The more he focused on her strength, the more he realized his own shortcomings. In a world of privilege, he felt like a fraud. While protective walls surrounded him, a growing part of him craved connection, a deeper understanding of life outside his gilded cage. Driven by an impulse he couldn't quite explain, Richard threw on a jacket and left his mansion. The town buzzed with a strange mix of recovery and judgment. Voices still whispered about Sarah's act of bravery. But beyond the shops and bruised roads, Richard knew where he needed to go. It wasn't the extravagant restaurants or charity galas calling to him, it was the modest neighborhood where Sarah lived. That as he approached her home, doubt began to creep in. What would he say? He was a billionaire, a man used to controlling his surroundings. But Sarah, she was different. Would she see through his facade? Just be honest, he whispered to himself, but the words felt like a fragile shield. Inside, Sarah opened her front door, startled to find Richard standing there, his presence somehow magnified by the softness of the morning light. As he looked at her, vulnerability flickered across his usually guarded expression. I just wanted to thank you for what you did for Mr. Jenkins. Her heart raced. Why was he here? It was nothing really, just what anyone would do, she started. But Richard shook his head. No, it was extraordinary. You saved him, and that's more than anyone expected. I'm not sure I could done something like that. His voice was sincere, and it sparked something in her, a curiosity mixed with wariness. You don't know that, she replied, crossing her arms as a defense. Courage isn't a trait you inherit. It comes from experience. What would you know about saving lives? Richard's jaw clenched. And what would you know about living in a world where survival is a game of privilege? In that moment, they stood rooted, two opposing forces in the fragile space between them. The air crackled, and it felt as if the world around them paused. Tommy's laughter drifted from the backyard, breaking the tension. The invitation hung in the air. It was something deeper than a rescue, more than a mere thank you. They each balanced on the edge of choosing to step closer to connection or retreat back into their own worlds, filled with uncertainty and misunderstanding. Maybe you could, Sarah hesitated, but a thought sparked. Maybe you could help out at the clinic? See what it's really like? Richard swallowed hard, hope igniting. I'd like that. As Richard stepped forward, gesturing toward the yard. So many questions brimmed underneath their thin veneer of civility. Could he truly transcend the barriers that society had placed before them? And would Sarah allow him even a glimpse into her world? With the gentle rhythm of Tommy's laughter intertwining with their silent pact, they both felt the beginnings of change stirring the air around them. But doubt continued to whisper. Could they bridge the gap between their lives? Or were they destined to remain worlds apart? The day unfolded slowly, a delicate dance between wariness and possibility. Sarah wiped her hands on a dish towel, glancing outside. Richard stood at the edge of the yard, his tall frame looking almost out of place among the blooming flowers and colorful toys scattered around. Tommy continued to play, oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. Back inside, the sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating Sarah's determined face. What exactly do you want to see at the clinic? She asked, folding the towel. Richard straightened, shaking off the awkwardness. I guess, I want to understand, really understand what people go through, the challenges you face every day. She studied him for a moment. You mean beyond your world? The glamorous parties and expensive things? Yes. He took a step forward, sincerity radiating from him. I want to know what courage really looks like. Watchfulness danced in Sarah's eyes. She could see genuine intent, but old habits were hard to shake. How could a man with so much wealth even begin to grasp the reality she faced? Okay, she said finally, her voice steady, yet laced with uncertainty. But you have to promise me something. Anything. You can't just waltz in and out. This isn't some game to tick off your to-do list. Richard nodded, his gaze piercing. Promise. With a reluctant smile, Sarah led him toward her car, a well-used sedan that had seen better days. As they drove through the neighborhood, She explained the clinic's struggles, the lack of resources, how she had to make do with whatever was available. He listened, absorbing every word, wonder and concern evident on his face. Arriving at the clinic, Sarah felt a swell of pride mixed with apprehension. The clinic was an oasis for many, yet its walls were battered, its floors stained with years of wear and tear. Richard's eyes widened as they walked through the doors. The receptionist, a woman with kind eyes, greeted them warmly. She raised her eyebrows in confusion with Richard's presence, but Sarah introduced him quickly. "He's here to learn." Richard's demeanor shifted, adapting to the reality that swirled around him. He watched as Sarah interacted with patients, her charisma brightening their days. He witnessed the tight-knit community, the shared laughter despite the concern etched on every face. His heart ached for the stories that spilled out freely and the resilience he witnessed. After several hours of shadowing Sarah, they found themselves sitting on a bench outside the clinic, bathed in the soft glow of the afternoon sun. "I had no idea it was like this," he confessed, looking at her. "You've opened my eyes, Sarah. I didn't tea." A hint of doubt crept into her voice. "You did this. You chose to be here." Her affirmation settled in the air, heavy yet light at the same time. Richard pondered her words, the truth of them reverberating within him. Over the next few days, Richard began to help the clinic, utilizing his resources to improve their situation. Together, they organized community events and raised funds. Laughter and chatter filled the clinic as it began to flourish, but the bond between them deepened even more. Yet, every time Richard looked at Sarah, a lingering fear clawed at him. Could they build something real amidst the chaos of their different worlds? Every smile they shared hinted at something unspoken, a truth buried deeper than either dared to admit. One evening, as they tidied up after a particularly successful event, Sarah paused, looking at him with a hesitant curiosity. "So what's next for you, Richard? Now that you've seen this side of life?" He hesitated, his heart racing with emotion. "I want to do more. I want to keep this going. With you." Her eyes widened with realization. "With me?" "Yeah," he said softly. "I don't want to walk away from this. From you." Just as words hung between them like a fragile thread, Tommy dashed towards them, breaking the moment. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" Sarah's heart warmed at the innocence of her son's request. But as she looked back at Richard, the question loomed. Could they continue to forge a path together, intertwining their very different lives? As the summer night wrapped around them, the air buzzed with potential. Would they take the leap, risking everything for a chance at something beautiful? Or would the weight of their worlds tear them apart? The following day dawned bright and clear, but Sarah awoke with a knot in her stomach. She had replayed Richard's words over and over in her mind. "With you," felt profound and overwhelming. Could it be true? Was he really willing to step into her world, into their world with all its messiness? As she prepared breakfast, Tommy's laughter ringed through the house like music. He was already awake, busy crafting a Lego fortress in the living room, his little hands moving with focus and imagination. She admired him for a moment, that innocent joy shining in his eyes. How could she possibly intertwine her son's life with Richard's? That was the crux of her worry, the thoughts swirling in her mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. "Mom, look!" Tommy called out, breaking her reverie. He held a small structure proudly aloft, a tower leaning precariously to one side. "That's amazing, sweetie," she replied, her heart warming at his enthusiasm. After breakfast, Richard arrived at the clinic, a stack of papers and blueprints tucked under his arm. His energy lit up the room, a stark contrast to the tired faces who shuffled in for appointments. Sarah found herself instinctively smiling as he greeted her. Even the patients looked a little brighter today around him. "Morning. I have some plans for the new community garden. It'll give us a space not just for flowers, but for the kids to play," he said, his eyes hopeful. Sarah felt a swell of gratitude. The clinic had always struggled without a proper outdoor space, and a garden would mean so much more than just flowers. It was life, it was hope. "Let us do it," she agreed, excitement threading through her words. Today, let us take a look at that space outside. With Tommy in tow, they ventured outside. The area was nothing but concrete and weeds, neglected for years. Richard unfolded the blueprints and explained his vision, speaking about the colors, the scents, the laughter he could almost hear echoing in that barren space. Tommy hopped excitedly. Can we have a swing set too? He looked up at them, wide-eyed with possibility. Absolutely, Richard responded, his voice breaking with genuine warmth as he knelt to Tommy's level. And maybe even a little place to grow vegetables if you take care of it. Sarah watched the interaction, her heart fluttering. There was something natural about Richard with Tommy. But would their lives really mesh? What if they had different expectations? As the day wore on, Richard immersed himself in the small operations of the clinic. He helped organize files, talk to patients, and managed to make even the most mundane tasks come alive with his infectious enthusiasm. They began to see beyond their initial boundaries, laughing and finding comfort in shared stories. But as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Sarah felt that familiar tension rise again. A shadow fell between them, one she feared would shatter the connections they were building. She had to know if Richard truly understood what being there meant. Can we talk? She asked, pulling him aside as the clinic emptied for the day. Of course, he said, his brows furrowing in concern. Under the fading warmth of the sun, she took a deep breath. What do you really want out of this? Out of me? The question hung in the air, dense like summer humidity. Richard's face changed. He looked serious, almost vulnerable. I want a partner, Sarah. Someone to share this journey with. But I need you to know, I'm ready for the hard parts too. His honesty struck a chord deep within her. Could they navigate this unsteady ground? Just then, a patient rushed in, breathless and panicked. Help! I can't find my son. That urgency pierced the moment, driving away the lingering uncertainties. Sarah's instinct kicked in. Call the police, she instructed Richard, who nodded and quickly pulled out his phone. As she sprinted toward the door, adrenaline surged through her veins. Behind her, Richard's voice was steady, calm, urging help as she felt Tommy's small hand slip into hers. What is happening, Mom? I don't know, honey, but we're going to help. They moved together, driven by their budding connection and the urgency of the moment. In that instant, a new alignment formed, fragile yet promising. What if this moment revealed something deeper, something that would change everything between them? What if, together, they were the answer to someone's worst day? Would they find the courage they needed, or would fear tear them apart before they could embrace what lay ahead? Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she dashed outside, the patient's frantic words echoing in her mind. The world around her felt sharp and bright, yet all she could focus on was finding the lost boy. A wave of protective instinct rolled over her. Her mind flickered to Tommy, and she instinctively squeezed his hand tighter. Stay close to me, okay? She urged, glancing down at her son. Tommy nodded, fear written across his small face. Where could he be? Richard's voice cracked through her racing thoughts. He was right beside them, the calm anchor amid the storm of rising concern. Maybe he went toward the park, Sarah suggested, remembering that it sat just beyond the clinic, a place filled with swings and slides that beckoned children like a siren call. They began to walk faster, instinct telling her to cover ground. Richard remained steady beside her, glancing around, alert as they approached the park. The swings creaked gently in the breeze, and the laughter of other children filled the air. Each joyous sound pulled at Sarah's heart, contrasting sharply with the anxiety coiling within her. What if we check the playground? Tommy piped up, his small voice surprisingly brave. He might be playing, he said, his gaze almost daring them to hope. Yes, let us check there. Sarah agreed, and they hurried toward the swings and slides. The park was charming, vibrant, but right now, it felt like a maze filled with traps of insecurities as they arrived. The scene lit up with parents watching over their little ones, but there was no sign of the missing boy. Sarah slumped momentarily on a nearby bench, gripping it as if it could shield her from the fear that throbbed in her veins. Hey, you're doing great, Richard encouraged, his presence warm and reassuring. Let us keep looking. He might still be around here somewhere. Mom. Tommy's voice trembled as he gazed around. What if he is scared? I would be scared. Her heart twisted at the thought. I know, sweetie. That's why we have to find him. They stood together beneath the fading sun, united in a goal bigger than themselves. A few minutes later, Sarah spotted a flicker of movement near the trees. A figure moved awkwardly, peeking out shyly. There, she pointed, her heart soaring. It was a little boy, no older than Tommy, hiding behind a large oak. Mom! Tommy cried softly. Is that him? As they rushed forward, Sarah could feel the tension unraveling. Hey, buddy, she called gently, kneeling to appear smaller. It's okay. Everyone's looking for you. Let us get you back to your mom. He hesitated, but her warm smile seemed to break through his fear. Slowly, he crept out from his hiding spot. Relief flooded Sarah when she saw him take tentative steps toward her. Just then, she heard sirens in the distance. Help was on the way. Richard was crouched next to her, meeting the boy at his level. You did so well. Can you tell me your name? His voice was soothing, and it seemed to comfort the child. I'm Owen. The boy whispered, his eyes wide with sudden tears. Hey Owen, I'm Richard. He offered a hand, and after a moment's pause, Owen reached out, taking it like it was a lifeline. Before Sarah could gather her own thoughts, she noticed a woman racing toward them, fear etched on her face. Owen! She cried, the desperation in her tone cutting through the air. As she reached them, relief washed over her features. I was so scared, Owen shouted, rushing into his mother's open arms. Sarah watched, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. There was raw joy in the reunion, but something deeper unfurled inside her. This was what they had braved together, this happiness, this relief. Their lives had intersected, all three of them united in this moment of salvation. As Sarah turned to Richard, she saw how much he had invested, not just in this rescue but in everything they were building together. Would this change their dynamic? She felt a whisper of something hopeful, yet tenderly uncertain that split second of connection. Richard's eyes held a question, a silent probe into her thoughts too. What if they ventured forward together? What if they faced not just the sunny days such as this, but the storms too? Unbeknownst to them, emotions wove tighter, a delicate thread binding their fates as the playground's laughter faded into the background. The allure of possibility shimmered in the air as new feelings began to dance in the space between them. And then, as if the universe was hinting at a deeper truth, a sudden storm cloud rolled in, casting an unanticipated shadow over the park. How would they weather what was coming? Would they have the strength to embrace the journey in front of them? The wind picked up suddenly, snapping branches and sending leaves swirling into the air. Sarah's heart raced again, not from fear this time, but from a haunting sense of urgency. Dark clouds rolled in overhead, ominous and heavy, a stark contrast to the warm glow that had surrounded them just moments before. Let us find shelter, Richard said, his voice steady as he grasped Tommy's hand, guiding him toward a nearby pavilion. The small structure offered a welcome respite from the whipping gusts, but it couldn't shelter them from the wave of emotions that crashed between them like the winds outside. Sarah watched as Owen's mother held her son tightly, reassuring him with soft whispers, desperate to keep the fear at bay. In that embrace, Sarah felt the familiar tug of motherhood, that instinct to protect and to nurture, even if it was not her own child. For a fleeting moment, she wished she could draw Tommy into her arms and shield him from all the storms of life. Hey, Richard said softly, pulling her from her reverie. He stepped closer, his gaze warm despite the darkening sky. You did great. You were amazing back there. She offered a tight smile, the weight of the moment heavy on her shoulders. You were amazing, too, she replied, but her thoughts drifted back to how instinctive it felt to care for Owen, to embrace that fierce protection. It made her think of Tommy, of how the very act of raising him had changed her, transformed her into a better version of herself. Seemingly reading her mind, Richard continued, how we work together to find him, maybe it's a sign. Sign? She arched an eyebrow, nearly laughing at the notion, trying to shake off the sinking feeling in her chest that said maybe, just maybe, there was more to it. Yeah, a sign that we should think about, but Richard was cut off as a sudden crash of thunder cracked overhead, startling both of them. The sky seemed to open up then, a torrential downpour cascading around them, heavy drops pelting against the pavilion roof. Parents scattered, trying to gather their children and find safety, laughter fading into startled shouts as the joyful chaos turned into a frantic rush for cover. Amid the pandemonium, Sarah caught a glimpse of Tommy, standing confused at the edge of the pavilion, his little face streaked with rainwater, unsure. "Mom," he called, his voice barely audible over the growing storm. "Tommy, come here," she shouted, her heart leaping with both panic and love. Richard went to him before she could reach her son. He knelt down, arms wide open, inviting Tommy into a protective embrace. The sight pierced Sarah's heart, a sharp reminder of all the moments that could easily slip by if they weren't careful. What was it that Richard wanted to say before the storm crashed in? As Richard consoled her son, Sarah felt the world around her shift. The rain washed away the lingering fears of the day, but not without leaving a trace in its wake. New memories, new possibilities, and perhaps a hint of vulnerability that could bind them closer together. Could they really weather a storm together? As she rushed to join Richard and Tommy, the full weight of their shared experience hung in the air, a delicate thread ready to snap or strengthen. Sarah glanced up, her gaze lingering on Richard, who met her eyes with a confidence that both soothed and unsettled her. In that moment, she felt a stirring deep within her. What would happen next, as everything around them transformed under the dark clouds? She took a deep breath, feeling the rain against her skin. This wasn't just about Owen anymore. It was about them, about the potential that lay there, waiting to break through like the sun trying to find its way past the storm. As they stood together, united in purpose, a figure emerged in the downpour, barely visible through the sheets of rain. Sarah's heart raced at the thought of what could be coming next. What revelation awaited them in the chaos of the storm? The figure drew closer, still shrouded in mist and rain, but Sarah's heart quickened as the outline became more distinct. It was a woman, drenched and struggling against the wind. Panic surged through Sarah. Who was she? Did she need help? "Hey, are you okay?" Sarah shouted, stepping forward. The thunder rumbled in response, a growl that seemed to amplify the urgency of the moment. The woman stumbled closer, her face contorted in fear. I lost my daughter," she managed to cry through the rain, her voice trembling. "She was right by me, and now Tommy," Sarah yelled without thinking, turning sharply to see if he was still safe. The pavilion was packed, filled with frantic parents holding their kids tight. Richard was still crouching down beside Tommy, who was now clinging to his arm. Without a second thought, Sarah sprinted back to where they were. "Stay right here," she instructed Tommy, grounding him with her intensity before turning back to the woman. "We'll help you find her," she promised. "Thank you," the woman exclaimed, her eyes wide with relief as she fell into step beside Sarah. Richard joined them, determination etched on his face. "What does she look like?" he asked, already scanning the crowd. "About 6, dark hair, pink raincoat. She was right here." The woman gestured to the spot where she'd last seen her daughter. "We'll split up," Richard said. "I'll head that way, Sarah can take the other side." "No, I have to look with you," Sarah insisted, her heart racing at the thought of a child lost in the storm. It felt raw and painful, igniting a fire inside her that she had never felt so strongly before. "Okay, just stay close," Richard agreed, and Sarah couldn't tell if it was the rain or the urgency that blurred her vision. They dove into the throngs of people, shouting the girl's name above the clamor of the storm. Sarah's breaths were quick and shallow. Images of Tommy filled her mind, his laughter, his light. The idea of a child misplaced out here sent shivers down her spine. What if it were Tommy? As they stepped under the pavilion's awning, she caught sight of a flash of pink darting between umbrellas and crying voices nearby. "There," Sarah pointed, hope surging through her. "I see her." They raced toward the little girl, who was frozen mid-step, tears streaming down her cheeks. Relief washed over the mother as she rushed forward. The girl scrambled into her arms, the reunion joyous yet peppered with the heaviness of fear. "Thank you. Thank you," the mother sobbed, clutching her daughter as if she would never let go. Seeing this moment of raw love ignited something deep within Sarah. She glanced at Richard, who watched with an expression that mirrored her own fear and relief intermingling until they blossomed into something more profound as they stepped back together. Stunned by the power of the moment, Sarah felt the threads of connection weaving tighter around them. "What were you saying earlier?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper, but she meant every word. Richard turned to her, eyes alight with realization. "Maybe we're meant to find something more together." He hesitated. "Maybe something real?" They both knew the storm wouldn't last forever, but the feelings bubbling up around them surged like the rain. Sarah's heart raced again, not just for the child they had found, but for the possibilities that lay ahead. Would they risk their hearts for more? The winds howled louder as the rain fell heavier, and they stood in that moment, feeling the world sway around them. What would they choose now? Would they take the first step toward the unexpected journey lying ahead? In the midst of the flying rain and fear, a fork appeared on their path. Would they dare take it? The rain continued to pour, but for Sarah, every drop felt like a gentle nudge from fate, urging her forward. The weight of the moment lingered between her and Richard, and she couldn't help but glance at him, searching for reassurance in his deep brown eyes. This storm had brought them together in a moment of chaos, but the connection they shared felt as real as the rain-soaked ground beneath them. "Do you really think we're meant to find something?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling with hope and uncertainty. The crowded pavilion, bustling with frantic parents and crying children, faded into the background as their gaze locked. Richard's expression softened. "I don't know," he admitted, vulnerability shining through his brave facade. "But after seeing how that mother reacted, I feel like we have a chance to dive deeper, to feel more. Together." Just then, the wind whipped around them, chilling Sarah to her core. She shuddered, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. Could she really open her heart up again? Would he still want to be there if she did? "Let us move," Richard said, stepping back from the moment. He took her hand, and it felt electric. They navigated the huddled crowd, weaving through families who desperately sought shelter from the storm. The chaos of the lost children and worried parents echoed in her ears, but Sarah's focus sharpened as she walked hand in hand with Richard. It was as if the storm had given them a purpose, a mission to protect those in distress. "Look over there," Sarah pointed, spotting a small boy crying alone beneath an umbrella too large for him. Without hesitation, Richard pushed through the crowd, and they reached the child just as he looked up, shocked by the presence of two adults. "Hey there, little buddy. What's wrong?" Richard knelt down to the boy's level, his voice warm and calming. "I can't find my mom." The boy sniffled, snuggling further into his soaked jacket. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, crouching beside Richard. "Let us find her together." "What's your name?" "Jake," he replied, his lips trembling. "All right, Jake," Richard affirmed. "What does your mom look like?" As Jake described his mother, Sarah felt the urgency clawing at her. Every second mattered, not just for this child but for whatever connection was blossoming between her and Richard. This was more than just a mission. It was about lending a hand, making a difference in someone else's life, and perhaps, in her own. Richard looked at Sarah, his determination evident. "Let us retrace your steps, Jake. Where was the last place you saw her?" With Jake's little hand firmly in theirs, they moved. Sarah's heart swelled as she and Richard exchanged quiet looks, whispers of encouragement passing between them. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a woman with similar features to Jake standing nearby, scanning the crowd frantically. "That must be her," Sarah exclaimed, tugging at Richard. The three of them dashed toward the woman, who gasped at the sight of her son. Relief washed over her as she scooped him into her arms. "Oh, Jake, I was so scared," she sobbed, cradling him tightly against her. Witnessing that reunion sent fresh tears to Sarah's eyes. It was a reminder of what really mattered. They were all connected by love and fear, especially in moments like this. As she stepped back, Richard's hand slipped into hers once more. An unspoken bond formed between them, deeper than the storm pushing down from above. They had shared this journey of rescue and connection, and it filled Sarah with warmth despite the raging storm. "Thank you," the mother said gratefully, emotion lacing her voice as her eyes scanned them. "You two saved him." "Anyone would do it," Richard replied simply, but Sarah saw the pride flicker across his face as they began to walk away. The rain finally started to let up. "What do you think we should do next?" she asked, her heart racing slightly at the thought of the future. Richard paused, looking out into the darkening sky. "Maybe look for more people who need help? Or find some shelter," Sarah offered, feeling brave. "Together?" he suggested, glancing at her, his hope reflecting her own. "Together," she agreed. But lurking behind her resolve was a flicker of doubt. Could they really navigate their own emotions while still helping others? As they stepped deeper into the heart of the rainstorm one more time, Sarah felt they were at a crucial point. What if they found themselves lost in more than just the rain? As they forged ahead, a question hung in the air. How far would they go to uncover the true connection between them? As the rain continued to lessen, Sarah felt a change in the atmosphere around them. The air was thicker now, charged with anticipation. Every step felt significant, weighed down by their recent experience, yet buoyed by the connection they were forging. Despite the uncertainty that lingered like the moisture in the air, Sarah was ready to plunge deeper into this unexpected journey. "Look there." Richard pointed toward a narrow alleyway lined with hastily set up tents. People were huddled together, some still searching for loved ones, while others offered small comforts like hot drinks and blankets. "We should check there. Someone might need help." Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about Jake anymore. It was something bigger. It was about shared humanity. As they approached, an elderly woman caught their attention. Her thin frame shook as she clutched a cardboard sign that read, "Lost my family. Please help." Richard turned to Sarah, determination flickering in his eyes. "Let us see how we can assist," he urged softly, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Ma'am," he said gently as they reached the woman, "can we help you find your family?" Tears welled in the woman's tired eyes. "I can't find my son. He wandered off in the crowd when the storm hit. I was trying to gather warm clothes when everything just turned chaotic." "What's his name?" Sarah asked, instinctively crouching to make eye contact. "Tommy," the woman replied, her voice breaking over the name like a wave crashing on rocks. "He's about 6, wearing a red jacket." Sarah exchanged a serious look with Richard, feeling the weight of the task ahead heavier than the rain-soaked ground beneath her. "Let us find him. You wait right here, okay?" The woman nodded, relief mixing with hope. They dashed back into the crowd, the urgency now fueling their every stride. The chaos seemed to swirl around them, but Sarah felt a renewed sense of focus. Every child they passed was a potential Tommy. "Let us check near the playground," Richard suggested, and Sarah agreed, willing the universe to guide them. They arrived to find the playground deserted, remnants of children's laughter hanging heavy in the air. A glimmer of movement caught Sarah's eye there. Peeking around a large slide was a small boy in a red jacket. "Tommy," she called out, rushing toward him. The boy turned, eyes wide with fear but lighting up with recognition as he spotted them. "I can't find my mom," he cried, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I know," Richard said as he knelt down beside him. "But we're here to help you." "What does she look like?" "Short hair, blue scarf," he exclaimed, darting glances to the edges of the playground, searching hopelessly. "Okay, Tommy. Stay here with me," Sarah reassured him while looking back at Richard, who was already scanning the gathering crowd. It was like a wave, they were in it together, working as one. "Let us go find your mom," Richard said, voice steady even beneath the storm's lingering howl. Sarah stepped slightly aside, her heart pounding. Would they find Tommy's mother in time? She hoped so. The air between her and Richard felt electric, with an unspoken bond, a shared purpose, a shared mission. They pushed through the dispersing crowd again, the urgency of the situation lending them an almost supernatural strength. "Stay close, Tommy," Sarah warned as they weaved in and out. A fleeting sense of purpose rushed through her, igniting that same warmth she felt when they helped Jake. It was as if helping these children gave her a glimpse of how beautiful connection could be, even amidst such anxiety and despair. Suddenly, they spotted a woman with a blue scarf frantically scanning the area, her eyes shimmering with panic and hope. "There," Sarah shouted, pointing her out to Richard, and they hurried forward, Tommy tugging at her hand as they approached. The woman's gaze shifted over to them. Recognition washed over her features. "Tommy!" she cried, and in that moment, Sarah felt a swell of joy, a release. They were doing something real. Before she could say anything, they were enveloped in a whirlwind of emotions. Tommy and his mom collided in an embrace that tightened Sarah's chest with warmth. It was a moment brimming with gratitude, love, and the promise of connection. Watching the reunion, she turned to Richard, her heart racing. "Do you think we can keep doing this?" she whispered, a spark lighting in her chest. Richard looked back at her with a mix of determination and something deeper. "I think we can save a lot of people today and maybe even find ourselves in the process." But just then, a distant cry broke through the air, the unmistakable sound of someone truly in distress. Sarah's heart dropped, and without hesitation, they both turned toward the sound. What awaited them now could either deepen their bond or push them further apart. Would they be able to continue their journey together, or would the weight of the world pull them down into the storm? The storm began to lighten, but the emotional turmoil surged within Sarah as she and Richard approached the source of the frantic cry. The wind still tossed their hair around, and a sense of urgency filled the air. "Stay close to me," Richard called out to Tommy, who was clutching Sarah's hand tightly, his small face a mask of both fear and determination. They rushed forward, following the desperate cries. As they turned a corner, they stumbled upon a scene that made Sarah's heart sink. A teenage girl, no older than 16, sat on the ground, her knees pulled up to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. An older woman, presumably her mother, knelt beside her, frantically searching the crowd. "What happened?" Richard approached gently, kneeling down to her level. "She got lost in the chaos," the woman gasped, her voice cracking. "She was right beside me, and then everyone just scattered." Sarah knelt beside them, feeling the weight of fear and despair wash over her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked softly, her tone reassuring. "Lily," the girl sniffled, her eyes darting around, lost, scared, trapped in a world that felt too big. "Lily, we're gonna help you find your mom," Sarah assured her. She could feel the heat of Richard's hand on her back, his steady presence grounding her. "Can you tell us what your mom looks like?" Richard asked, keeping his voice steady and calm. She has brown hair, kind of curly, and a blue jacket," Lily stammered, wiping tears from her cheeks. "Okay, let us do this together," Sarah encouraged, sharing a determined glance with Richard. They stood as a united front and, with Tommy in tow, they started searching the now thinning crowd. "Look over there," Tommy shouted suddenly, pointing excitedly to a woman with curly brown hair who was frantically looking around. "Isn't that her?" "Yes, that's her." Lily jumped to her feet, hope illuminating her face. Richard took off towards the woman, a pulse of energy guiding him as he got closer. "Excuse me," Richard shouted, waving his arms. "We've found your daughter." At the sound of his voice, the woman turned and rushed forward, her face a mixture of disbelief and relief. The moment they met, Lily fell into her mother's arms, sobs of relief escaping her lips. "Mom!" she cried, locking them together in a fierce embrace. Sarah's heart swelled as she watched. There it was, the raw power of connection, the pure joy of reunion. It was all she had hoped for, all she had fought for, and it filled her with an overwhelming warmth. Thank you so much," the mother gasped between breaths, looking at Sarah and Richard. "I thought I lost her forever." Richard stood beside Sarah, grasping her hand as they both took in the scene. "You're not alone anymore. You don't need to worry," he assured, a protective vibe radiating from him as they watched the reunion unfold. An undeniable realization began to settle over Sarah. This right here was more meaningful than any wealth or privilege. They were part of something bigger now, a powerful bond forged in their willingness to show kindness and support. But the weight of their own hearts lingered at the edges. There was still doubt, a lingering fear of what could or couldn't be. "Can we keep helping?" Tommy piped up, his voice small yet filled with conviction. Sarah turned to see his bright eyes, filled with the hope that only a child could muster. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, the words bursting forth like the clouds parting after a storm. She felt empowered by the connection they were building, by the shared experience that was so raw but beautifully real. "We can be their support." Richard nodded, a renewed sense of purpose filling the air around them. "Together," he affirmed, squeezing Sarah's hand, grounding them both as the raindrops began to falter. They started moving again, dealing with lost souls and fears, creating moments of connection everywhere they went. Hours passed, and the storm had all but faded. Laughter began to replace cries, and Sarah and Richard worked with families recovering from a day filled with turmoil. They pulled people together, uniting the town once again. Finally, as the sun broke through the clouds, painting the sky with warm oranges and pinks, Sarah felt a quietness unbeknownst to her before. Standing next to Richard, watching Tommy play with the other children, she realized she wanted this, the fulfilling sense of purpose that had erupted within her heart. Richard turned to her, the earlier hesitation in his eyes replaced by something deeper. "You were right. The chaos brought us all together. I want to keep this going, Sarah. I want to be part of your world, and my heart tells me to follow that path with you." Tears pricked at her eyes, and she felt the long-established reservations start to fade away, replaced by a spark of hope. "Do you really mean that?" she asked, her voice filling with emotion. "Absolutely." He took a step closer, his face earnest. "There is so much more we can do together. And maybe we can explore what this could mean for us, for all of us." In that moment, their fears transformed into faith. They stepped closer, the distance between them vanishing, unveiling the possibility of shared lives and dreams. The rain, once an obstacle, had turned into a catalyst, washing away her doubts and fears. United by simple acts of courage and kindness, they had weathered the storm together. As the last remnants of the storm disappeared, the town began to heal. Richard reached for Sarah's hand, and as they walked forward, Tommy at their side, it felt like a new beginning shaped by connection, forged in compassion, and forever insulated against the storms of life. And in that warmth, surrounded by laughter and resilience, Sarah felt something profound, the promise of an extraordinary adventure that had just begun. You need to subscribe now for more inspiring stories like this. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let the world know about this incredible journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your action makes all the difference.